Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Alright guys, welcome to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host on Mondays. On Thursdays, Casey Foreman. Welcome to today's episode. This show is also brought to you by the GSMC podcast network, not basketball podcast, the podcast network. So like I said, welcome to today's episode. A whole lot to discuss and break down in the world of basketball. If you had the chance to listen to my last episode, my last podcast, I discussed the Western Conference. I put myself in the role of general manager, of GM in the NBA, and I took a look at the entire Western Conference. If you didn't have a chance to check it out after this one sometime. I broke down the entire Western Conference as I promised on last Monday's episode. I now want to take a look at the Eastern Conference. Again, put myself in the general manager role, the front office role, if you will. Take a look at the Eastern Conference. And there's honestly been a lot going on in basketball right now as far as trade rumors. I'm not even sure. Honestly, when people are allowed to make trades, can teams make trades right now? Are we officially in the offseason? I know we are, but can teams make... I don't know what's going on. I don't know all the rules, quite frankly, right now. But either way, there are trade rumors going around, and it's really quite shocking to me. The Pelicans are shopping. Again, surprised to hear that word, but shopping Drew Holiday. A guy they've had for years, a veteran player in this league, can play on both sides of the ball. I thought he would help bring along some of those young players they had on the roster in New Orleans, but apparently, they are looking to get rid of the potential all-star. What, has he been an all-star in the league before? If not, he's definitely been snubbed, an all-star caliber player for sure. I think it's very interesting, and I think a lot of teams are going to be interested in Drew. Like I said, a two-way player, a veteran in this league, can shoot the three ball, can facilitate, can play really good, a first-team defender potential. So will we see teams like Milwaukee, Golden State maybe has potential, Milwaukee, Golden State, Miami even. So I know people want to throw the Lakers in there possibly, but we'll see. I think a lot of teams, though, will be interested in this very good player. I'm surprised to see the Pelicans, again, getting rid of such a good player. Surprised to see that, honestly. But hopefully he goes to the right team, a contending team, and maybe he can go for a shot, for a champion. Maybe the 76ers as well. Ooh, that's interesting as well. I'll get to that later in the show. Also, more rumors about Devin Booker in Phoenix, I heard. I think his name is Ryan Russillo, maybe the Ringer podcast. He was on there and said, apparently the worst kept secret, apparently it's to me as well. I didn't know this either. Maybe I was a little naive. But is that Devin Booker wants out of Phoenix? Apparently, that is the worst kept secret in the league, according to the Ringer, Ryan Russillo. So, I didn't really know that. Maybe I was being naive. Maybe we all kind of thought that. Maybe he was just kind of assuming so, because we all kind of assume who would want to play for that losing organization, despite you putting up those numbers. That can be frustrating. Who would want to do that? So obviously we understand why, but this is news to me. Not too many details coming out now. I don't hear anything coming from the Suns necessarily, just a little bit of chatter, on a podcast, I think. So not too much to talk about there. If we do end up hearing more details, and this does end up blowing up quite a bit, expect more details going forward, perhaps on next Monday's podcast. What a blow blow it would be for the Phoenix Suns if they did have to give up, their franchise player in Devin Booker. You hate to see it, but again, I completely understand why it would go down. But like I said, like I did on Monday, let's get back to what I started. Let's, like I say, finish what I started on Monday. Let's put myself back in the role of GM, and again, let's go out east. Again, we will start from the bottom up to the top. Okay, we will work our way up. Let's start with the Cleveland Cavaliers, all the way down there at the 15th slot in the Eastern Conference. A team, yes, with no cap space. Okay, a team with no cap space. However, they do have the 5th pick in this year's NBA draft. So I do think they have some. They do also have some assets on the team. So I do think this team has some options despite being out of cap room. I think the best thing for them to do would be to trade their guy in Kevin Love. I know that they're paying, giving him quite the contract right now. So I get rid of the contract, the aging player in Kevin Love, get him to a team that he can actually help contribute on. So I move Kevin Love, get maybe, if I can, get a first round pick for him. If not, maybe try to get just some good players. If not, a young player you want to take a chance on or so. Either way, I get rid of Kevin Love, clear some cap room. I get some. Again, I try to get some draft picks if possible. I also, you just got Andre Drummond. I don't quite understand the move. Either you want to extend Andre Drummond, who's going to be on the last, year of his deal, or you want to look to trade him as soon as possible. You got him for next to nothing. Perhaps you can move him for a first-round pick. Again, Kevin Love and Andre Drummond, I would honestly, if you're not looking to extend Drummond especially, I look to move both of them and try to get as much as possible while their stock is seemingly pretty high. So yeah, if I'm the Cavs, I move Kevin Love, I move Andre Drummond, try to get young draft picks, perhaps some young players maybe you want to take a chance on or so. The only way, honestly, for this Cleveland Cavalier franchise, we've seen it before they drafted a guy in LeBron James. Even when they had him, it's because they drafted him. The only reason he wanted to play there is because he was from Ohio. So the way they're going to get better is from building through the draft, the NBA draft. They have the 5th pick this year. You use that 5th pick on a player, maybe Advija, or I'm terrible at pronouncing his name, but maybe him, and maybe you move Drummond and Love to try and generate some more picks, some more talent, for down the road, since you are obviously still rebuilding the roster, what they seemingly always are doing without a guy named LeBron James. But again, Cleveland is going to get better through the NBA draft. That is the only way. The only people I am looking to keep, to not trade necessarily, are guys like, I think his name's Darius Garland, and Colin Sexton, I think. So those are basically the only two guys I'm not looking to trade. They're young, they have upside, but they are both point guards, so you might need to get rid of one of them sooner rather than later. So maybe if they have a decision, maybe you move Garland and Kevin Love in a package to get so a lot of first round picks or something. Anyway, you take a chance. I prefer Sexton over Garland as of now, especially on the offensive side. Either way, they're both point guards. They might have to make a decision on one of them. I think they need to move either Kevin Love or Andre Drummond, if not both of them, while their stock is somewhat high. And again, I draft Advija if possible with that 5th pick, if he's the best player available. Maybe you go for Obi Toppin with size, or even more size. Again, they're both around the same height, I would probably say, but Obi obviously the more small forward, Advija more of the guard, big guard type of player. I know he's tall, but still. And then Killian Hayes is out there as well. Maybe he'd be a good fit as well. Not sure what way they're deciding to go. Either way, I build through the draft. That's the only way you're going to get better in Cleveland. Get them to buy in. Try to get a coach that's there for the long term. And again, build through the draft. Get them to buy in and build long term. Keep on to your players, your young players, move on your older ones, try to get some draft picks. That's what they should do in Cleveland. What about the Atlanta Hawks? Let's go out to Atlanta. This team, was not competitive last year. I'm not going to beat around the bush. They were not competitive whatsoever. They did, however, establish, they have a franchise point guard, an all-star, all-NBA caliber point guard in Trae Young, averaged almost 30 points this year, was an all-star. So, yes, they have a franchise guy in Trae Young. So they established that for sure this year, and they do have a good group of young players like DeAndre Hunter, my guy from Virginia, a college champ, Clint Capella, Kevin Huerter, John Collins, Cam Reddish. So all those players, relatively young, all have a relatively high upside, and then led by a franchise point guard in Trae Young. So this team has upside despite not being competitive last year. A lot of potential. If I am them, I use that number 6 pick. I'm not really interested in building through the draft anymore. I pretty much have my young players if I'm Atlanta. So what I want to do is try to trade the number 6 pick, which they do have. I trade the number 6 pick for maybe a veteran player, maybe a former All-Star if available, maybe they can go after Drew Holiday if he's available. Either way, if I use the number 6 pick, I go after a guy who's been there, done that, to try to help this young team with potential reach that potential sooner rather than later, try to get them into the playoffs, make that playoff push in the Eastern Conference, which we know is pretty much wide open as far as getting into the playoffs. So if I am the Hawks, I trade the pick for a veteran player. They also have cap room, about $48 million of cap room. So I also use that, not all of it, obviously. You don't want to spend your entire $48 million on or overspend it necessarily. You're still going to have to pay guys long term down the road. But you get guys, you get veteran players at least around this young roster. And again, you try to make a playoff push in the wide open Eastern Conference. Perhaps Drew Holiday would be open with that number 6 pick. Maybe another player you could toss in that you have. Maybe you throw in Cam Reddish, the number 6 pick. You get Drew Holiday, maybe another first-round pick next year or something like that, or second-round pick. I'm not quite sure what it would take. Either way, I go after Drew Holiday. I go after players like that to help me try to win right now. If I can't get them in free agency, I use that money to get guys like Serge Ibaka, guys who have been there, done that, Danilo Gallinari, guys who have been there, done that, help teams overachieve at times. So I go out and get at guys like that with the cap room that I do have, and I don't overspend for anybody. And again, I don't use that number 6 pick. I trade it and try to win right now, get veterans, try to win as soon as possible if I am Atlanta. What about the Detroit Pistons? Okay, Detroit, this team, quite honestly, has started, I don't want to say looking in the right direction. They traded Andre Drummond, which I don't really agree with. I know they should rebuild the team, so they're heading in the right direction. But as far as trading Andre Drummond and what they got in return for him, which they got like a second-round pick and Brandon Knight or something, so not necessarily up to the standard of Andre Drummond or what you think he has the upside of him at least, right? So not to that upside, not to that standard yet. We see them giving him away necessarily. They still are holding on to the former All-Star in Blake Griffin, however, who also brings up quite the price tag. So not quite making sense in Detroit. You seem to think they should be moving on from, especially a player like Blake Griffin, if they already moved on from a guy like Andre Drummond, a younger player. Also, I guess from this point on in his career with more upside, I would probably say also. So that didn't quite make sense. So you gotta, obviously point then to the rebuild, right? So they're heading in the right direction. But what they need to do now is continue the path they started with the trade of Andre Drummond. You need to get rid of the older Blake Griffin. Okay, and again, I don't quite understand them getting rid of the younger player instead of the older one right away. Maybe the trade market for Blake Griffin is that small, and again, maybe it was that small for Andre Drummond as well, perhaps. Either way, they got to get rid of Blake Griffin as well. An older player. This is a rebuilding roster. Detroit needs to move Blake, get as many picks as possible. You're probably going to lose Christian Wood in free agency this year unless you can get him to stay, sign him long term, maybe sign him to a larger contract than anyone else is willing to risk on him. Despite that, he's probably going to go and get somewhat paid, not too much by any means, no max money by any means, not even close. But he's going to go out there, get 10 maybe $12 million per year, perhaps, and I don't know if Detroit will be able to offer him that, so I think he's going to go and leave to a better position, and they traded Drummond and then inserted Christian Wood into the starting lineup, and he showed tremendous upside. So not quite sure exactly what they're doing. Like I said, either they need to extend Christian Wood if they lose Wood, and then maybe they want. I don't know what they're doing to Detroit exactly. So they probably want to try to re-sign Christian Wood despite them probably losing. You want to move Blake Griffin, get as many draft picks as possible. They also have a guy like Derrick Rose. Okay, they have a guy like Derrick Rose as to where he also is at the tail end of his career, I would say, still putting up good numbers, maybe putting up in the role of the sixth man, maybe perfect for that role now in his career. So maybe now you trade Derrick Rose, you trade Blake Griffin, get as much as you can for these players while the stock is somewhat high, right? You can't think it's probably going to go up from now. They both had decent years, especially Derrick Rose. So I get rid of both those guys unless you want to keep Rose around for a veteran six-man role, which I also understand. But I trade him if I can get a first-round pick from it. I do. If I can trade Blake Griffin and get a first-round pick, I do that as well. If I can extend Christian Wood, I do that. You continue and you accelerate if you can the rebuild, getting as many picks as possible from Blake Griffin, from Derrick Rose, and again you try to keep the young players like Christian Wood and acquire more young players to start and continue accelerate the rebuild in Detroit. Not quite sure what they're doing there. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, continuing on, the first team to come back will be the New York Knicks. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, guys, welcome back. Like I said before the break, let's continue on putting myself in the general manager role, the role in the front office. Last week, if you didn't have a chance to check it out, I encourage you to go after this podcast, go check out Monday's episode, where I took a look and discussed the entire Western Conference. But like I've been doing today, guys, let's continue on, and girls, let's continue on with the Eastern Conference, me taking a look, diving in, discussing the Eastern Conference, again, putting myself in the general manager role. Let's start out, like I said before the break, with the New York Knicks. The Knicks, obviously, again, not going to beat around the bush here. A disappointing result, and I feel like that has somewhat been the trend for New York in the past 3 years. They had to trade Carmelo. They weren't even relevant, honestly, in the last, years of Carmelo. But Carmelo, they had to trade. They had to trade, Kristaps Porzingis, which obviously left them with nothing much to speak of after those two players. Then last year, in last year's draft lottery, obviously hoping for number one, hoping to luck out with the Zion Williamson number one overall pick. They then get number 3, end up getting R.J. Barrett, a very good player, a good player. I don't know about a very good player, but a good player, not Zion by any means. So a disappointing, draft lottery last year. disappointing free agency last year that they didn't end up getting anybody they hoped for. And Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, they didn't land a single person. They ended up getting Marcus Morris and maybe Gorgie Deng. I don't even know. They ended up getting or Bobby Portis. That was it. Bobby Portis and Marcus Morris ended up being the guys they ended up signing in free agency. So a disappointing free agency last year, disappointing draft lottery. It's been a disappointing, few years for New York, and it continued on in this year's NBA draft lottery. They end up getting the 8th pick in this year's draft, a very disappointing pick, hoping to get a guy like maybe LaMelo Ball. So it's not looking good for New York, but if I am them, I do whatever it takes because I've been so, somewhat irrelevant over the past, few years. Again, since a guy named Carmelo Anthony was getting us into the playoffs, which even then, I can't even remember the last time they were relevant in the Eastern Conference postseason. So it's been years since true relevancy. It's been since guys like Patrick Ewing where they are getting them to the NBA Finals. So yes, it's been so long. If I'm them, I do whatever it takes to move up in this year's NBA draft to select the biggest name in this year's draft, in my opinion, which is LaMelo Ball. The way he plays a 6'7" guard who can pass, shoot. He is the flair that this team needs. He also has tremendous upside if it ends up panning out the way teams and people are hoping for him to do so. So yes, I do whatever it takes. The only person I honestly don't really want to move, since they just got him last year, is RJ Barrett. Besides that, I move anything else, but I'm not really sure. They do have a whole lot of young players, young assets potentially to move. Kevin Knox, Dennis Smith Jr., other players as well that they have. So they have assets if people like them, want to take chances on them, but to move up in the draft, if other people are wanting to select LaMelo, it's not quite looking good. But if I'm New York, like I said, I do whatever it takes to move up, to get a guy which I need, bring the flair to the city that they need. It's the city of stars, right? They need a big name in Madison Square Garden. Hopefully, sorry, I hit my mic. He can do so. He can bring that. But again, they got to do whatever it takes to move up. We'll see if they can do that. And again, I don't even know if they have enough assets, enough picks to do so. They don't need to do what they did last year, and that is to overspend on so talent, especially a guy like Marcus. They ended up getting a first-round pick from Marcus Morris, actually. So maybe that it worked out a little bit. Either way, you don't want to overspend in free agency just because there aren't bigger names out there and you have the money to spend. You don't want to just sign guys and oversign them just so you have them and just so you sign somebody, right? Just so you spend the money that you have. You don't want to just spend it because you have it. You want to save it down the road long term as well. Especially if you do end up moving up and you have to extend guys down the road. So you want to hold on to that money as long as you can. Don't overspend on so talent in free agency. Move up, if possible, whatever it takes to get a guy like LaMelo Ball. If not, it's just going to be a so guy down there at number 8, more than likely, unless you luck out with a guy like Killian Hayes, maybe, who has tremendous upside that everyone overlooks. And like I said, unless they get a guy that everyone overlooks and has tremendous upside. Either way, not looking very good for New York. They need to do whatever it takes, and they need to be smart in this year's free agency. What about the Chicago Bulls? Chicago needs to continue. Chicago, right? They need to continue the rebuild. They need to continue to get better. I think they've been consistently, somewhat getting better. They've been pretty bad over the past couple of years. They acquired guys like Zach LaVine. I loved that trade from Minnesota. A great trade, getting a guy like Zach LaVine winning now. So a great trade for them. They got Zach LaVine. They got Kobe White in the draft a couple of years ago. Lauri Markkanen, a guy obviously they got in the Minnesota trade, I think, as well. Otto Porter Jr., Wendell Carter Jr. So they have some young talent in Chicago. I think they have they have decent upside as well, as decent potential as well. So they have all-star potential in Zach LaVine. If he can carry them, perhaps have an all-star level season. Before he got hurt this year, he was averaging 25 plus points per game. So if he can do that, even on a higher level, get them to win. If these young guys like Kobe White, Markkanen, Porter Jr., Wendell Carter Jr. can continue to progress, get better, and contribute to this team. They have the number 4 pick also in this year's draft. So if I'm them, I get, I think David Advija, I think it's David, the 6'9" guy from Israel. He's a ball handler, can move the ball, can spread the floor as well. You hope Zach LaVine can stay healthy. Like I said, an all-star potential player, no doubt in my mind, an all-star potential player in Zach LaVine. So you hold on to him. You try to maximize him. Obviously, you try to keep him healthy, keep him safe, and then you use the number 4 pick unless there's a guy like Drew Holiday who's available for the number 4 pick. You go and get him. Either way, if not, you use it on a guy like Advija. If not, if there's no one else better available, a guy who's a bigger guy who can still spread the floor, move the ball, do multiple things for your team. So that's what I do with the number 4 pick. I use it. I select a player with the draft, barring a team wanting that pick, willing to give me what I want. Unless something like that is going on, I use the pick. Again, if I can get a guy like Drew Holiday, I do that. The only way I say that is because he's available, guys. That's why I keep saying his name. But yeah, that's what I do if I'm Chicago. Continue the rebuild, continue to get better, build through the draft, barring an opportunity can't pass up, and continue to develop and hope guys like LaVine can stay healthy with potential, all-star potential. Let's move to the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte, a team that hasn't been, relevant in, maybe their entire relevancy, their entire tenure. So the Hornets, a team that honestly also I don't want to keep beating up on Charlotte, on the Hornets, but they also just lost their franchise point guard, their franchise player in Kemba Walker. So that is a big blow to lose him. You can't blame him for losing. He went to a much better situation, started winning right away in Boston, made it to the Eastern Conference Final right away. So in comparison to making the postseason maybe once, maybe twice. I'm not quite sure how many times he made it, maybe once or twice. Either way, he made the best decision getting out of Charlotte. Now, obviously, maybe they were already somewhat rebuilding. Now, either way, there's no doubt they are rebooting the franchise. So now it's a question, what do we do? We have the number 3 pick. They kind of lucked out this year. We got the number 3 pick in this year's draft. We also, do we have caps? I don't know if they have franchise. I don't honestly think they have a lot of cap room either. Actually, they do have cap space. I'm seeing they do have cap room, so they do have cap space. Quite frankly, they do have cap room, so they have the number 3 pick. This team has options despite losing. I was unsure if they did. I thought that they're actually getting rid of the Nick Batum contract coming up. They did overpay for Terry Rozier. That was why I thought it could have been locked up. Either way, they do have some cap space available. It seems like I don't have the exact number here, but with a number 3 pick, I don't trade it. I continue to rebuild with young players. That's honestly the way you get better in Charlotte. Not really the best free agent destination. So you continue, you try at least to build through the draft. And with the number 3 pick, if he is still available, I draft LaMelo Ball. I just was talking about it for New York. I do whatever it takes to move up. But if I'm the Hornets, I don't take the call from New York if he's still available at number 3. I select him. I select a big name player. You get a guy like LaMelo Ball, a big name. He's going to sell jerseys. Eventually, he's going to get butts in seats, for your stadium. He's going to get your team maybe on TV, maybe once a year when exactly you're not really going to be on at all. So he's going to get your team to somewhat relevancy, to maybe a little bit, to be a little bit relevant. Again, a big name is going to sell jerseys. If he's still available, if Wiseman and Edwards go 1 and 2, If I'm the Charlotte Hornets, I don't take the call from any other team, and barring, again, something I can't pass up, I don't take the call, and I select the young player with big upside in LaMelo Ball, and I continue the rebuild. He's going to put butts in seats. He's a 6'7" player who can pass, rebound, somewhat shoot the ball at times. Right? We've seen glimpses of him being able to shoot the ball, so I don't give up that pick, and I continue to rebuild, reboot the team, which you've been doing for a long time, and hopefully a guy like LaMelo Ball can make you somewhat relevant, and hopefully he has the upside, the true potential, and can reach that potential to get you guys maybe to relevancy in that Eastern Conference. If you're listening, Charlotte, do not mess it up. You want to select this guy. Don't mess it up. Select LaMelo Ball if you are the Charlotte Hornets. Also, like I said, they do have cap space, so a very young team. You want to try to get some other young talent if possible. You maybe might have to overpay like they did for Terry Rozier, so that quite honestly isn't the best path. If you have cap space, you want to try to get some veterans who will come play, but if you want to get veterans to come play in Charlotte, you're going to have to overpay for them. So you're going to have to use that cap space, try to get veterans to help your team progress, get better. But again, you want to try to get as many young players, keep rebuilding this thing. That's the way you're going to get better through the draft, not overpaying so guys in free agency, not doing the whole Nick Batum incident. Again, overpaying him. We know how that's worked out for the Hornets. So no overpaying in free agency, which is usually what you have to do if you're in Charlotte. Don't mess it up. Hornets, select LaMelo Ball if he is still available at number 3. I want to take a quick break. When I come back discussing the Washington Wizards, don't go anywhere. That is coming up after the break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, guys, welcome back. Like I said before the break, let's continue on taking a look at this Eastern Conference. The team I want to start out with, like I said, is the Washington Wizards. Despite all the rumors going on right now, despite everything I've said on here about Bradley Beal and wanting him out of Washington, if I am Washington, if I am the Wizards in that GM position, I hold on to both Bradley Beal and John Wall at least for the next season or so. You got to try it out. If John is healthy, if Brad is going to be healthy, if Beal is going to be healthy, you got to try it out. You got to see if Wall is still himself after those injuries. You got to see if Beal and Wall can play together and win. Obviously, I think Bradley Beal is in the prime of his career. Average 30 points last year, was snubbed from the All-Star team, was snubbed arguably from the All-NBA team, if you will, if you want to argue that with the way he played. I don't think necessarily, but he had a case at least, right? So Beal had a career year. He's definitely in his prime. John Wall was in his prime before these injuries. We will see if he can pick up where he left off. So if I am the Wizards, I hold on to both John Wall and Bradley Beal, as well as Davis Bertans, their second leading scorer last year. So hold on to Bertans, 15 points per game, on like 40% from three. So he can spread the floor. Keep Bertans, keep John Wall, get Bradley Beal. John Wall, I'm sorry. Wall loves to move the ball. He loves to assist the ball. Okay, we know he loves to pass. So I don't think Ball will have any trouble sharing with his official co-star in Bradley Beal. So I think Beal or Wall will do nothing more but share the ball, get Beal more wide open looks. So I definitely try it out for the next year or so. If I am Washington, what do you have to lose necessarily? If anything, you have nothing but upside. If it doesn't work out, you trade the guys right away. So you try it out for a year, see if the two guys work. I don't see there being an issue again with Wall loving to assist the ball, with Beal shooting it better than ever, playing better than ever, wanting to win more than ever. So I think those two guys will click more than likely. Washington needs to play it out for the next year or so, at least up until the trading deadline at the very least. Hold on to your guys if you're the Wizards. Don't let them go quite yet. Keep it going in Washington. If I am in Orlando, the Orlando Magic. The Magic, a team with limited cap space. Decisions are to be made. If you are Orlando, if you are someone in the loop for the decision making for what they're having to deal with in the Magic or organization. Basically, they're going with, should we extend Fournier, who's going to be a free agent? They already paid Vucevic. We have Aaron Gordon, who's going to need to be paid eventually. We're already somewhat paying him. So we can't afford all of these players. And we have young guys like Bamba, Isaac, and Iwandu, who they drafted last year in the first round, I believe. So you have players like that already. So you have to make a decision. You can't keep everybody, right? So if I am Orlando, I extend Evan Fournier, who is their best and their most consistent scorer and shooter. So you want to keep that offense flowing if you are Orlando. So you extend Fournier. Like I said, they already paid and extended Vucevic a year or a couple of years back, so he's already paid with his max contract. He's going to be in Orlando for a while unless they end up trading him. So either they're going to have to move off of Fournier, which I think they should keep their best scorer, move off of Vucevic, or move off of Aaron Gordon. So I think since they already paid Vucevic, Fournier being their best scorer, you keep those two and you move off the player that the should be dunk champ, in Aaron Gordon. Because quite honestly, Aaron has not had the upside that they were hoping for. He has not been the player they have expected him to be. And again, they already have young players like Bamba, Isaac, Iwandu. So you continue to develop those young players. You keep your best scorer in Fournier. You already extended Vucevic, your franchise player, somewhat, your best player, somewhat in Vucevic, right? Your all-star. So you trade the guy in Aaron Gordon. I think you can get somewhat of some stuff, at least for him. I don't think he has no market. So I think there will be a market out there for a very good, versatile player in Aaron Gordon. If he's in a very good organization, I think his ceiling will rise. So if he's at a very good place, I think he's going to play up to that level. So very excited to see where he lands. I think Golden State, for some reason in my mind, is connected to Aaron Gordon. So I think for some reason we might see Aaron Gordon end up in a team like Golden State. We'll see what goes on. Either way, I think Orlando needs to trade Aaron Gordon, continue to develop the young players they have. They can't keep everyone on the roster with the limited cap space. It's time to make some decisions in Orlando. What about the Brooklyn Nets? Yeah, okay, the Brooklyn Nets, a team we are all looking forward to seeing next year, a team people are crowning the best team in the Eastern Conference despite their two best players not playing a dribble of basketball together. Their whole team not playing a dribble of basketball together. Despite that, we are seeing them being crowned the best team in the Eastern Conference. And I want to say, honestly, it might be rightfully so. It honestly is. Not too much to do in Brooklyn for the Nets in this year's offseason. Like I said, not too much to do for the Nets. They need to establish, one thing they really need to do is establish veteran leaders in the locker room, and especially for on the court. You don't want the questions going on during the season. Who's taking this last shot? Who's deciding who's taking the last shot? This stuff needs to be somewhat talked about beforehand. It shouldn't be, we're going to figure it out and wing it. This stuff needs to be talked about. It can cause issues down the road. We've seen it cause issues with teams. So if I am this team, already there's leadership, questions. There's been leadership questions for their stars in both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So if I am in Brooklyn, I establish my leaders, my guys early right now in the locker room, on the court. They also need to re-sign after they establish their guys who they're going to look to. They also need to re-sign Joe Harris. Re-sign a guy in Joe Harris, a 3-point champ. They're one of their best three-point shooters on the entire roster. He can knock it down, contested, you name it, he's going to make it and take it. So a big shot taker in Joe Harris. You re-sign him, who's going to be a free agent. I'm guessing he's going to want to re-sign and be a part of this team no matter what. So you re-sign Joe Harris, you establish veterans, you establish leaders, This team, like I said, not too much to do. This team has made the playoffs now in consecutive seasons, in consecutive years now. Without guys like Kevin Durant, without guys like Kyrie Irving all year. Kyrie played like 20 games this year. Despite that, they still make the postseason. No Kevin Durant whatsoever. They make it back to back. Again, not too much to do. This is already an established roster. What they need to do now is establish leaders, guys to look to, guys to count on. You expect it to be Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to some extent, to some level, right? Since they're the two best players. So you expect it to go to them somewhat, to some level, like I said. But you got to make sure you got to establish that now. Maybe another shooter. Again, you got to bring back Joe Harris. Maybe you bring back or try to sign another veteran shooter. Maybe for the veteran minimum. Not a whole lot of cap space to go around in Brooklyn right now. So maybe again, you make sure you get Joe Harris. Get your guys to know who to look to, who to count on. Probably Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, despite they have been questioned for leadership factors, leadership in the past, quite frankly. So you do that, maybe get another shooter or a playmaker in free agency. But like I've been saying, this team is pretty much set going forward. Not too much to discuss for Brooklyn going forward. This team has it set up pretty well. What about the 76ers? Philadelphia team obviously had a disappointing end to their postseason after the injury to Ben Simmons. Yeah, obviously that is a disappointing end to your postseason. You get swept by the Boston Celtics, a team that seemingly has had your number for years now. So if you're the 76ers, also a team with basically no cap space to talk about, it being tied up in guys, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and then guys like Tobias Harris and Al Horford. So, in my opinion, you gotta move. You have to move one of the two, maybe even both. Probably one though. You gotta move one of the two in Harris or Horford. In my opinion, you definitely have to move Horford. The contract they gave him, huge mistake. Hasn't been what you hoped for him to bring. So you gotta move him. You gotta get shooters. This team needs guys to shoot and make 3-point shots. Maybe you go out and try to get a guy like Joe Harris. Try to get him from the Brooklyn Nets. They need 3-point shooters. They were at their very best with guys like J.J. Redick, Marco Bellinelli, Dario Saric, who could shoot the 3-ball. So they were at their best. Jimmy Butler. They were at their best with guys who could shoot the basketball. They get away from that now. Now we've seen them struggle. So you move off the contract, the player in Al Horford. That was a contract. You swallow that pill and you move you move on, you move off of it. You don't dwell in the past. You don't try, to make that piece fit and work when it definitely doesn't. That puzzle piece doesn't go there. It goes somewhere else. Quit trying to force it in. You move Al Horford. You move the contract. You get shooters like JJ Redick, like Joe Harris potentially. This roster, just looking at it, just watching it play, we know it is not a great fit. We know it has team chemistry issues, so it needs adjusting, and that's exactly why they got a guy in the general manager role. Not myself necessarily, which I think I would do a stand-up job in Philadelphia if you're listening. Hey, down the road, just saying. Either way, that's exactly why they got Daryl Morey, a guy known to do exactly that. Make the moves that you need to make. Put the guys around the stars that complement them in the very best way. So I have nothing but faith in Daryl Morey to do that exactly. That's exactly why they brought him to Houston in the first place. But again, if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, you tried out one more year with the whole tandem of Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, that whole group. You tried out for basically one more year. In my opinion, you don't want to beat a dead horse here. So you tried out for basically one more year. Maybe, you make some small adjustments here and there. Maybe you try to go and get, I've been saying this all podcast since he's available. You try and get a guy like Drew Holiday who would fit perfectly in Philadelphia. So if they can make some adjustments like that, that's exactly maybe what they need with all the moves they made in the front office, in the coaching staff. Either way, if that doesn't work out, I trade one of my pieces in Ben Simmons, in Joel Embiid. If it doesn't pan out after a year, I'm getting ahead of myself. What they should do this year, get rid of the Al Horford contract, try to get shooters. You were at your very best, Philadelphia, with guys like JJ Redick. So you make some adjustments for this roster. Try to get guys out there. If you can get a guy like Drew Holiday, go out there and do it. And get shooters around your guys. Try it out one more time, and then maybe you trade one and try to get another move. I think the whole James Harden rumor out there is kind of silly. Why would they trade Ben Simmons for James Harden? Despite, I don't know, maybe that wouldn't work. So I don't know. I don't understand that. Move. Don't count on that move, even though Daryl Morey used to be in Houston. Don't count on that. I now want to take my final break of the show. Okay, when I come back, the teams I will be discussing will be the Miami Heat, the Boston Celtics, the Heat, the Pacers briefly, the Celtics, Raptors, and the Bucks. So four or five teams to speak of quickly when I come back. So a quick break when I come back, discussing the rest of the Eastern Conference. Don't go anywhere. Keep it locked.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, everybody. Like I said, about 4 or 5 teams to discuss here in my final segment of the show. Thank you for sticking around this far into the episode. But like I said, let's start out with the Miami Heat, the team that we just saw in the NBA Finals, might I remind you. If you guys forgot, yeah, we just saw Miami in the NBA Finals. And if I should remind you of this as well, they still have a max contract open, a max contract slot open. That is scary to think of, and in my opinion, it's time to capitalize on that now. If I know I talked about it earlier, and I've been talking about it, so much on this podcast. If Bradley Beal, if Washington will take a call, I don't think they should. If they will, though, if I'm Miami, I get Bradley Beal. You have room. You try to keep the roster together, but if I can, I get a guy like Bradley Beal. Despite me saying again they should keep him, maybe they go out and get it. Oladipo or something whose value is pretty low right now. Maybe a guy like CP3, who I think would fit very well in Miami. So maybe they go out and get a guy who plays both ends of the floor, can shoot the three ball, create for himself, create for others as well. So maybe CP3 would fit fantastic. It would be a fantastic fit in Miami, I think. But maybe Bradley Beal, though. Ooh, if they could maybe wait one more year, if it takes waiting 1 year and signing him with that max slot, that's exactly what I do if I'm Miami. He is definitely worth waiting, but one more year. Maybe they settle with Oladipo. Maybe they go out and get a guy like Chris Paul, who would work very well. But also, what if they go out and get a guy like Danilo Gallinari? Okay, a very good player. He's going to be cheaper than those other guys, more than likely. A very reliable option. Like I said earlier, he helps teams more than likely overachieve. We saw it with the Clippers. We saw it with OKC. Now he was a part of both groups, so he's helped them overachieve. A consistent scorer. So I think Gallinari to Miami might be a very, very smart move. Look out for that move. Miami's smart. They know that would fit very well. Miami needs more. That is not enough to put them, over the hump to make them win the championship, but it would be a very good addition. Would put them one step closer. I think CP3 or Bradley Beal would definitely put them over the hump and say they are contenders for the title. No doubt. But Gallinari, a very good player, could eventually put them to that point. We very well could see them take that option, a very reliable option, like I said. So we very well could see them take that route. Either way, a max slot open for them. They were just in the NBA Finals. It's time to capitalize this season or next. Capitalize on it now. Try to win right now. Again, they're very capable, very smart. They're in Miami for the Heat. They know exactly what they're doing. Now, what about the Indiana Pacers, a team that is somewhat rebooting? Maybe now they just fired their head coach, despite me thinking he's capable. But again, the move, getting the guy from Toronto, I'm blanking on his name right now. People are speaking very highly of him. But if I'm in Indiana, what I do if I am the Pacers, I first talked to Victor Oladipo, but it sounds like it's looking like he wants to leave next year. If that is looking like the case, I am shopping him around. I am looking to see who wants him, and I'm trying to get as much as possible, which is obviously what you want to do. But I'm shopping Oladipo. If he is saying, yeah, I'm probably going to leave, I am shopping him right away. I'm trying to see who wants him. I'm getting Kyle Kuzma if that's the best thing available in a first-round pick. I'm taking whatever I can get, if that's the best thing possible. Again, you might be able to get something a little bit better from a team who values him a little bit higher. We'll see, but I do think his trade value is as low as ever, and it's not going to be another getting Paul George, like your OKC, trade Victor Oladipo and get a guy like Paul George. That's not going to be the case here. His trade value is as low as ever, but again, I'm shopping him. I'm getting as much as possible from the guy whose stock is at an all-time low. I am also, since I have no cap space in Indiana, you got to try to get draft picks, try to get young players, but you already kind of have a decent amount of those. You have Malcolm Brogdon, a former Rookie of the Year, T.J. Warren, who went off in the bubble, Miles Turner, who's a decent player, Sabonis, the Holiday brothers, who are both young. So you have a decent amount of young players with upside. You need more, though. You need a bigger piece to put it all together. Again, it's hard to get guys to go to Indiana. More than likely going to have to happen through the trade, through young guys developing. So maybe, again, you try to shop Oladipo, get a first-round pick. Maybe you try to shop Miles Turner, get a first-round pick. Get whatever you can for these players while their stocks are high. Some of them are low, though, so you're not going to be able to get much for them. But again, if he's going to leave you anyway, you got to get rid of him as soon as possible. You want to try to get as much as possible for him. So yeah, a lot to do, honestly, if you're Indiana. Not too much cap space to do. You have a decent amount of young players. You got your new head coach, new coaching staff. You want to keep rebuilding, keep building your team, and try to get something for Oladipo while you can, if he is in fact looking to leave, which it's looking that way. For the Boston Celtics, let's go for Boston now. I would hold on to Gordon Hayward, the guy who could be a free agent this year. He could opt in, he could opt out. If I'm Boston, I do whatever it takes to get him to opt in. One last year of his deal, you try it out one more time with the team you have together. If you don't reach the finals or win the finals, you let him go in free agency next year. But if he's willing to stay and opt in, I don't know why he wouldn't with the contract he has with you guys. But you hold on to Gordon Hayward for one more year if he'll stay, and you try and acquire a defensive big man. Okay, I think Boston definitely is looking for a defensive big. They have offensive big in Cantor. Tice can be a defensive big, but is just smaller than all the other big men. So you try and acquire a defensive big. You try to hold on to Gordon Hayward if Boston. Again, you were just in the Eastern Conference Final. You definitely underperformed against Miami. You should have beat Miami, no doubt, with the talent you have together. But again, Gordon was hurt a little bit. Kemba was hurt throughout the playoffs. People they were going through injuries. I don't want to make too many excuses. They should have played better. They should have won the series when it comes down to it, plain and simple. I hold on to Gordon Hayward. I get a defensive big. But besides that, there's really not too much to do if you're the Boston Celtics. You simply all you really need if you're Boston, you need the trio that you do. You need to keep them together. That's the first. Keep that trio together. You might need to sign Brown to a long-term deal if you can afford it. But you need Brown, Tatum, and Walker to be consistent on both ends of the floor in the postseason. That is not what we saw when it came down to it. We saw shaky performances from them, so you need consistency from your three biggest guys. That is the biggest thing they need to work on. That is the biggest thing that Boston needs going forward. That and a defensive big. Okay, what about the Toronto Raptors? Only two teams left in the East, guys. What about the Toronto Raptors? I think they need to try and retain and re-sign if they can. Retain Serge Ibaka and or Marc Gasol. I don't know if you'd be able to get both of them. Try to keep one of them if you can. But number one priority has got to be Fred VanVleet, okay? A guy who's going to be a hot commodity on this year's free agent market. He's got to be the biggest name out there, with the most upside out there on this year's free agent market. People are going to be able to pay him, going to want to offer him a larger role with a max contract potentially. So if I'm the Raptors, I do whatever it takes to extend VanVleet to keep him in Toronto. And we know they won't be playing in Toronto next season, but metaphorically keep him in Toronto. They do almost have $20 million in cap space, though, but I don't think that will be enough for VanVleet, for Ibaka, for Gasol. So they're going to have to make decisions. These guys won't all be Raptors when it's all said and done, but number one priority has got to be the young player in VanVleet. Keep him around for the long haul. He has got to be one of your foundational pieces going forward. Hopefully, winning a championship there, it'll be easier to keep him to stay. Or maybe if they wanted, a bigger piece, either way, only $20 million. They're going to have to make decisions. Not going to be able to keep everyone and get a bigger piece. My idea for Toronto, the best thing for them is to keep VanVleet, extend him long term. Keep your roster together though as much as you can, and keep it together. Keep trying it out. Ultimately, you guys came up short against Boston. You should have beat Boston, in my opinion. So you came up short. You lost a series you should have won. You played worse when you should have played better. You can play better, most definitely. One of the best coaches in the league. Keep your players together, extend your players. That's what you do. I'm sorry. If you're the Toronto Raptors. Now the final team I want to discuss here has got to be the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously, number one priority has got to be extending Giannis Antetokounmpo, the back-to-back MVP. You gotta hope, you gotta want to extend Giannis, extend his contract. However, if he doesn't do that, if he doesn't plan to re-sign. But again, if he says, I'm not going to sign the extension here, but I am planning to re-sign with you guys next year. I want to be a Milwaukee Buck long-term, but I think I can make more in free agency that way instead opting out instead of opting in. I don't know all the contracts, specifications, but if he doesn't opt in, if he opts out and has no plans to re-sign, you have to move him with no verbal commitment from him to stay with no contract extension. You have to trade him for a historic haul, a back-to-back MVP in the prime of his career. You can get a haul for him if you're Milwaukee. If he's not going to sign long-term, you get a haul. You get as many first-round picks, as many players as you can while you can. But realistically, I don't think that is what we're going to see in this year's offseason. I think he's going to opt out. He's not going to sign long-term. They're going to keep him. They're not going to trade him. And what they need to do, though, is trade for a guy like CP3. Keep the shooters around. Do anything it takes to get a guy like CP3. I think that would fix a lot of their problems. He can lock in on defensively. He can help them offensively, get a bucket when they need to, create for others as well. So do whatever it takes. Get a guy like Chris Paul. Keep your shooters. I think that, like I said, that'll fix a lot of your problems. Get Chris Paul. Maybe they settle for a guy like Victor Oladipo. Either way, they need a guy to create offense for himself. They need more offense. They need help. Giannis needs another all-star caliber player. So maybe they get a guy like Chris Paul, Victor Oladipo. Either way, they need help. And especially though, if Giannis doesn't commit long-term, I trade him, quite frankly. I don't think that is what we're going to see, though. I think we see them make moves. Maybe get a guy like Chris Paul, get a guy like Victor Oladipo. They need to win now if they want to keep Giannis. They also need to sign Giannis long-term. Not sure what they're going to do, but guys, that is the Eastern Conference. I've now done both the Western and the Eastern Conference. If you've been listening, that is a whole lot of work to do for both 15 teams, a whole lot to do in both the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. If I had to say one more than the other, I'm probably weighing more on the Eastern Conference side since the West is the best conference. But if they can listen to what I said, if they can try to improve, like from the things I've been talking about over the last hour, maybe they can work their way to the level of the Western Conference. We'll see, but this is going to be it, though, guys. That is it for the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Thank you all for your continued support. Go leave us a comment or review on whatever platform you're listening on. Go like us. Go follow us on Twitter, on Facebook as well. Again, thank you all for your continued support. It's a big week in America. So hopefully you all had a chance to kind of take a break, listen to what's going on in the world of basketball. Again, thank you all for your continued support. I'll see you guys on Monday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.